Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Happy 2023. Let's get into the video. The way that I've broken this down is I'm going to tell you about 5 books that are specifically written for children, either small children, middle grade, teenagers, and then I'm going to let you know about the 5 adult books that I read that I just absolutely adored. The first book that I read in 2022 that I just loved, this book was so good. That is undoubtedly Fungarium. This is a book I've talked about on my channel before that is a part of a wider Welcome to the Museum series. As you can see, it is just stunning to look at. This book is truly unique. It is truly beautiful and informative and so much fun. Would you like to hear a fun fact about fungi? So did you guys know that the largest biological organism on our planet is a fungi forest in Oregon? I will say, before you drop money on these books, check your local library and see if you have copies there, because this book is very expensive. This is a $35 book. I think this book is worth $35. But before you drop that money, I know money is tight for a lot of people right now, maybe look at your local library, read it with your kids, see if your kid is old enough to, have the attention span to sit down with you and read this. I loved this book. This book was a delight to read. And I hope you pick it up, or one of the other books in this series. The next book that I read that I just absolutely was delighted to pick up in 2022 is undoubtedly Perfectly Pegasus by Jessie Sima. I have also talked about this book on my channel before, and it was everything I wanted it to be. This is the sequel to Not Quite Narwhal, which is one of my favorite picture books of all time. This is also one of those books that is just so beautiful to look at. I mean, just the artwork in this book is incredible. This book is all about community and finding one's place within a new community, even if you don't quite fit in conventional ways. So Perfectly Pegasus by Jessie Sima, highly recommend, so good. Another picture book that I really want to highlight for you is A Shelter for Sadness by Anne Booth. I picked this up from my local library. It was just a part of like a big holds pickup that I had, and I wasn't expecting this book to wow me the way that it did. This book is a beautiful exploration of sadness and how we make space for sadness in our life. And this book really, in a way that is so accessible for small children, it really lays out really beautiful, healthy, constructive ways to feel our sadness, to make room for sadness in our lives, and to know that sadness is always going to be a part of our lives. Regardless of how happy we are, sadness is always there, and we have to embrace that and welcome that and know that that's a natural, normal part of life. The artwork is also just exquisite. Man, I am a sucker for a beautiful picture book. This is it, man. This was so good. I don't know what else to say. Now, going over to the 2 YA novels that I read this year that were just delicious. The first one I want to highlight is The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is basically a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but it's very gay and it's very fun, but there's also a really beautiful undercurrent in this book about self-love and self-acceptance and being happy as as you, as the individual you, regardless of what your friends think, regardless if your little brother is being a poopy face, you know, all that good stuff. This book is so much about being with people who make you feel good and prioritizing the people in your lives who encourage you and build you up and love you and accept you for who you are. Molly Knox Ostertag is also such an incredible artist and is specifically so great at, you know, laying out her panels. I actually gifted this as a Christmas gift this year to one of my sisters-in-law. And I just want everyone to read this book. My last book written for a younger audience, it's a young adult novel, Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. This is probably one of the coolest magical realism novels I've ever read. I read this book in one sitting, which I'm noticing is a pattern with me and Lina. Her books, I devour them. I am addicted to her writing. She is such a talented writer. This book is a 10 in everything. It's got incredible prose, stuff that I had to reread multiple times because I was like, God darn, that's a beautiful sentence that you made, Lina. The plot was incredible. The world building was incredible. Like I said, the magical realism in this book was off the charts. It was so unique. It was so interesting. I honestly would love to read more books set in this magical realism world. I want to know more about it. I want to know how it works. I want to know everything. I also gifted this to my other sister-in-law for Christmas because I'm obsessed with these books, guys. Read Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. It was a revelation. Cannot recommend this book enough. All right, so those are my top 5 books written for younger people. Now let's get to the adult reads. I don't think this is gonna be a shock to anyone because this book was so hyped. Everyone loved it. I have not heard a single negative criticism of this book so far on the internet. What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Guys, this book was everything I wanted. Oh God, I don't even know how to even describe the beauty that is this book. And by beauty, I mean horror, because this book was truly grotesque. If you don't know, this is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. I am a huge fan of Mexican Gothic. Love that book. Read it in one sitting, maybe 2 sittings. I don't quite remember, but I inhaled that book. Loved it. And in the author's note, T. Kingfisher says that the reason why she finished this book was because she read Mexican Gothic, loved it so much, and gave her all of her inspiration for finishing the book. If like weird fungus stuff is your thing, dude, you gotta read this book. I would honestly pay all the money for an illustrated edition of this book because I thought I was getting just like a great product with how amazing this cover is. And then I opened up the opening like flaps of the book and I was like, okay, I'm glad I sprung for the hardcover because I don't usually do that. Not a fan of hardcover books, guys. But oh man, it was so... I think I also read this in one sitting. I think there's a pattern here that if I read it in one sitting, it becomes a new favorite. But this book is also really funny. The characters are really funny. I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this book. I think this book is a great example that not all books need to be 500 pages long to be excellent. I loved this book. This book was perfect. It was everything I needed. I'm a huge fan of T. Kingfisher. I've read some of her other works, and I can't wait to pick something else up by her in the new year. Another novella that I read that is a retelling of a previous work was Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. I am aware that half of the internet despises this book. I get it. I know. I understand. I don't care. This book was everything that I wanted in a novella. It was short. It was sweet. It was self-contained. It was to the point. Sometimes a girl just wants to read a standalone novella and call it a day. If I remember correctly, I read this book also in one sitting. All these books I read in one sitting. I read this book in one sitting the same day I read Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. That was a great reading day. I loved every minute of it. I'm not going to say what this is a retelling of because part of the brilliance of the book is you not really knowing what's going on until it's too late. However, I will say I have 2 degrees in biblical studies, and this book hit hard for me, guys. It hit real hard. I loved this book. 5 stars. I cannot wait for this to be out in paperback so that I can buy it and I can put it on my shelf and I can reread it and I can annotate it. I am so excited. Another book that I absolutely adored that some people hated on a visceral level was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I realize that this book comes off kind of pretentious. I get it. I understand, but I genuinely loved the main character. I thought he was great. Didn't care as much about the other people in the book, but I was really invested in the main character, in his story. I thought it was so brilliant to make him the main character when in the acting troupe that he's a part of in his college, he is not the leading man. He is not the villain. He is the sidekick. That's the role that he plays within the acting troupe that he's a part of, for sure. I think I've mentioned this on the channel before, but I actually studied abroad in college at Oxford University. And while I was at Oxford University, I studied Shakespeare. I studied the comedies in particular, and I love Shakespeare. I have read his plays for fun. I read his sonnets in 2022, loved them. They were great. I had a great time reading them. I think if you don't like Shakespeare, if you don't care about Shakespeare, don't pick up this book. I don't think you're gonna enjoy it. But if, like me, you love Shakespeare, you like a good murder mystery, and you enjoy really honest character explorations, I think you would enjoy this. Again, I know a lot of people didn't like this, kind of the same vibe as Comfort Me with Apples, but I also hope that people give this book a shot because, oh man, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the storytelling techniques that she employed. Honestly, I read a bunch of really great manga this year, and man, it was difficult to figure this out. I'm gonna have to give it to Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. This is such a fun series. It's so fun to read, but there's also a lot of emotional stuff going on with the story as well. But at the end of the day, this is about a found family coming together and making a new life for themselves. I love this series. I know it's really big on BookTube right now, and you've probably heard other people talk about it. But if you are interested in reading manga, I would really give this a shot. It's excellent. And last, but certainly not least, we have The Spider's Mate Trilogy by Tiffany Roberts. How do I even begin to describe the love that I feel for this series, for these characters? I talked about this series extensively in my mid-year wrap-up, and I actually just recently reread the trilogy in November. I know that reading romance novels in general is still something that everybody can be kind of weird about, but especially romance novels like this that are about monsters or aliens or non-human people. I don't think it's something that's really cracked into like mainstream book culture yet. It will one day though. If I have anything to say about it, these books will get the respect they deserve. If you are curious about dipping your toes into this world, I think this is an incredible way to start, because Tiffany Roberts does not just write smut, which also nothing wrong with writing smut for the sake of smut. There's nothing wrong with reading smut for there's nothing wrong with reading smut. There's nothing wrong with reading smut for the sake of smut. It's fine. Not a problem. But if reading smut for the erotica alone is not something that you're interested in, God, these books are so incredible, because not only is the smut great, it's so great. Tiffany and Robert wrote some real good smut, guys. But they also wrote this incredibly interesting, intricate alien world. This is objectively a great science fiction series. There's a lot of really awesome sci-fi tropes and images, and it's so good. If you are a huge sci-fi reader and you're interested in seeing what this whole romance thing is about, this is it, man. This is what you should read, in my humble opinion. Really quickly, this is about a spider people called the Vricks, and they live on a planet, and they, as far as I know, are the only sentient beings on the planet. And then one day, one of the Vricks goes down into a hole and finds a ship that crash landed on his planet, and there are some humans in there that are asleep, and he wakes one of them up, and then he falls in love with her, and it is wonderful. It's delightful. The tentative release for the 4th book in this series is in June of this year. So, you know, we're gonna have to wait a little bit for it. But honestly, I would be delighted with anything else they give me at this point. So if it takes them a year to write another Vricks book, I don't care. I'm here. I will wait as long as it takes, because I'm obsessed with Catan and Ivy, and I want to see their story continue. And I also want to see the stories of all the other characters in this book. Anyway, friends, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sticking around and seeing what I loved this year. I hope that you got some really good recommendations. Friends, as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and have a great day. Bye.